Good. So welcome everybody to this training and lecture on that is taking place. First of all, it's a training lecture with Vivienne Tauchmann, a designer based in Leipzig, Germany. And we invited her in the context of a workshop series on crafting situations in the first year master program here at HDK-Valand, to share with us her practice and way of working through this session. And the first part of that session will be live streamed through Open Window. So we invite more people to possibly join and see or learn about the work. And then we continue in a second part, which is then more the continuation of the internal workshop, which is then not public anymore. So this session will be recorded, live streamed, and also the first part of the session will be archived on Open Window and can be viewed later. So first of all, I'm very happy that we continue this format Open Window also after the first intensive launch week, and make it more an integral, try to make it more an integral part of our teaching practices to allow an insight into what we do in teaching and education at HDK. So having said this first, so I want to only say a few words about Vivienne, because I think she will be best explaining about her work and sharing with us what she's doing. But I'm really happy that you are here and talking and letting us experience your work. And I have met Vivienne a few years ago in the context in Eindhoven, at the Design Academy in Eindhoven. And since then, she has developed a really interesting practice, I think, that relates to the workshop that we are currently doing and around notations and scoring, and how that might be an interesting tool, how to work in an expanded and critical design practice. And Vivienne has a really interesting example of using the body as a way of transmitting and also notating knowledge, as I would frame it. You probably frame it differently. But so I want to give the word to you, Vivienne, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Judith, for this warm introduction. And thank you also for inviting me, because, yeah, I mean, maybe on this way now, first of all, also hello to all of you. I'm really happy that you joined this session. And I'm looking forward to this time we will now at least spend virtually together. And yeah, as I said, I'm very happy that Judith actually invited me, because to say her work also hugely influenced somehow the development of my practice. So it's somehow very beautiful to come together in this space right now. And all of you, I'm really happy that you joined this session, and I'm looking forward to does it so now I was hearing myself. But I don't want to talk now that much. I actually want to, invite you now to move our bodies. And first of all, I would like to ask maybe, so because I see now quite some of you have the camera on, and since this is a collective experience, if for the ones that don't have the camera on yet, if it's possible to turn it on, that would be amazing. Because as I said, even though we are virtually not virtually not at the same spot, but virtually together, it would be great to somehow create this common experience. And we are going to start. It's going to be pretty simple. Just look for a space in your room a bit, and basically just follow my movements and the instructions that you will hear in a minute. So please also just stand up. I hope you have a bit of space in where you are in your rooms. And I will turn on some audio. And then, as I said, I just ask you please for the next 24 minutes to copy my movements and just stick to these routines.
upper body up. Stretch arms. Stand straight. Bend upper body down. Grasp with both hands. Bend upper body up. Stretch arms out. Open hands. Bend upper body down. Grasp with both hands. Bend upper body up. Stretch arms out. Open hands. Repeat continuously. Lift your hands up. Form your hands to fists. Move your left hand slightly back and your right hand slightly forward. Repeat. While you move your upper body downwards. Stand straight. Lift your hands up. Form your hands to fists. Move your left hand slightly back and your right hand slightly forward. Repeat. While you move your upper body downwards. Repeat continuously. Bend arms. Move your left hand to the left side. Move your left hand back. Move your right hand to your left hand. Move your right hand to the right side. Move your left hand to the left side. Move your left hand back. Move your right hand to your left hand. Move your right hand to the right side. Move your left hand to the left side. Move your left hand back. Repeat continuously.
Slowly stop these movements and come back to your screens. I'm going to share a document with you, which I'm also going to share on the screen in a second. And I would like you to read it, take your time for it. And for the next, let's say 5 to 8 minutes or something, I would like to ask you to, I just sent you a link to an Etherpad. It's called Etherpad Tell. I want you to open it, and instead of having a discussion now verbally, I want you to all just write in there. It will show different colors and we will write all simultaneously. And I would like to ask you just to write down what you felt, what were your thoughts, what did you experience in your body, why did you maybe drop out, why didn't you maybe follow the instructions. Basically just really writing down your experience and your current thoughts. Why did you, for example, I saw some maybe dropped out or maybe didn't join. What was the reason? Like, I mean, you can write here everything. It's anonymous. It's only colors. Also, I would like you to reflect on, your movements. Did you try to make it more comfortable, and why? Or was it feeling weird? Did you feel like certain pain, or was it more like, okay, I don't know really what these movements are? maybe you also even had pictures in your mind while doing these movements. You can also write these ones down if you had some images or some personal situations even. Maybe try to, even though you might have still some thoughts, I don't know, but try to somehow wrap them up and slowly, like, I guess, yeah, stop at least the writing. We are going to also have a moment later to reflect, and I thank you for first of all joining in this experience, sticking to these movements, and also for these thoughts now. Before we're going over into also maybe a verbal discussion, I would like to immediately actually switch to a small presentation about my work, my practice, why we were doing this, what is the aim of this, and then I'm very happy to discuss things further with you. Going to share my screen again. So, okay, I hope you all see it. Can you maybe, like, is it working?
Yes.
Perfect, great. Okay, so a small introduction to my work, my practice, where it comes from, why. So, my practice is influenced by a certain fascination about our body as a very kinesthetic learning material. Maybe, after this experience that we just did now, you might understand like what kind of effects our body movements can have, but often on a daily life basis, we are maybe not aware of this. And why I use this in my practice is because I realized at one point that words and the ways how we usually exchange knowledge might be not that sufficient anymore.
Wir sollen die Kriminellen endlich mal abschieben. Schluss damit, mit der Solidarität. Und die sollen da in reiche Ölländer gehen, wo sie hingehören. Doch nicht zu uns. Wir haben doch genug Elend bei uns selbst.
I guess we all, witnessed the last years that racist ideologies and hate and protest is on the rise again. It's not just on a bottom layer, but it suddenly is really in public life again. And actually, from my own experience, where I grew up in the east of Germany, in Dresden, racism hardened confrontations, especially also against people that were not maybe born here or look not like the white majority. I often recognized a lot of events of hate and protest, and especially also in rural region of Eastern Saxony. At one point, I started to ask myself, okay, where do we reach the state of crisis where we cannot see the other as a human anymore? And this development that I already recognized when I was maybe a bit younger started to also in the last 10, 12 years to come to the, as I said, back to the middle of our civilized lives. And interestingly, it's really a state where it's about we versus them on so many levels, left, right, north, south. And this polarization somehow is really showing this kind of individualist thing. And I want to quote here Caroline Emke, who wrote a brilliant book, in German, where she writes, "No one defines we by themselves. We is created when people act together, and it disappears when they separate from each other." I guess this is currently maybe a state of crisis, also what we maybe saw in the last elections or other things that just happened recently. But also from my own experience in working in or being engaged in several initiatives and NGOs or anti-racist groups, I witnessed also that actually these forms that we usually have to engage, for example, on the street or in lectures, are often not sufficient because they are often based on quite rational knowledge or even based on signing petitions and trying to find reasoning, find verbal or visual reasoning for one's own and for my own understanding of a plural and a just world on a global scale. So there was then a point when I started to wonder, okay, how can we maybe find other ways of communicating? And especially if you look into political camps, it becomes really obvious how the layers of visual language is hardly not even comprehensible, but also how maybe especially visual language is something that is not sufficient anymore to understand certain complexities and also understand certain aims or certain, if you want to call it, ideologies. Which becomes, for example, very obvious if you look into political left and right camp, but also actually if you start to look at this embodied knowledge, like when you are in a protest or when you are engaged in let's say grassroots and on the field, in this very experiential, almost performative experience, the picture suddenly starts to look completely different. Here it's in the comparison, for example, between left and right, the one against the other, but you can clearly see one is, for example, addressing really human beings to hurt them, while the other, for example, material goods. So this experiential level was for me a point when I started to realize that maybe this embodied knowledge and how we really feel something through our body once we are out of a once if we don't just look, for example, at pictures or at reports about working condition, whatever, how could this be maybe a tool to develop empathy, understand complexities, understand power dynamics, and start self-reflection. And on this journey, at one point, which was also, as I said, influenced by lot of influenced by work that I experienced along the way, such as, for example, as I said at the beginning, with Judith when she gave a workshop back then in my master, and I suddenly started to realize, okay, actually our body is also a materiality that can be somehow shaped, and our thoughts can be shaped, and our body and mind is connected. I started to develop at one point these programs, this continuing program of trainings, which are called self as other trainings, that really are, here you see a diagram, try to somehow bring the a glimpse of an experience of someone else that is maybe very far away from us, or that we can usually not like face because on a bigger scale, into our presence, and make us start to reflect about our own positioning, for example, about privileges, about our role, about like global structures. Until now, there are a series of multiple trainings dealing with labor conditions that mostly happen in producing countries in the global south, but also situations on a daily life basis that, for example, deal with access or exclusion to certain spaces that maybe a white able body like me takes for granted, but might be like a completely other situation for another person. And these trainings, as we also did it now, are happening until now in several different contexts. So I try to bridge a bit the dimension of, let's say, performative environment, a kind of performance stage environment, with actual context of workshop and educational pedagogical environments. So here, for example, this is more in scenarios where an audience maybe doesn't even know what we are going to do. And since these movements are quite simple, and at the beginning you might think, what we are doing, it creates this surprising effect of like, oh, wait a second, now I'm in a different zone. But also in public space, I experienced also that there, because the recognition of these movements, of these routines, is also something that, can be really strong to reveal the message that is behind it. And as I said, really in workshop context and in pedagogical formats of, for example, here in Germany with other NGOs together, or with other initiatives that do great educational work. But once you bring in some experience and some body knowledge, it can also change these very abstract notions, for example, of global production chains or these dimensions. And all of this embodied research and this continuation of also looking into bridging this notion of otherness, because I think at the end we have to somehow reflect on it more critically, that all of us are an other, and we are all multiple and different. I started to like engage or develop a certain like an initiative where we are developing collaborative projects that specifically try to deal with notions of otherness beyond this individual experience, but very much from an embodied and from a performative experience, because performativity as a political term, but at the same time also artistic practice of role play and embodiment, can be, from my perspective, a very powerful tool to start debate, negotiate differently, and find other ways of basically living together and starting again to get into processes of change. This was short presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Vivienne, for throwing us into this experience. And I think it was probably very different from everybody, as you could also see from the screens. I saw like very different relations to it, from having lunch to dancing to following the exercise. And I think that was, for me, maybe the most striking, that it became so obvious, these attitudes, this difference between the freedom to move because you want to move, or kind of you're obliged to move for a specific purpose or in order to survive and stuff like that. So I think we basically performed it as a group, and we perceived it in our individual action. I think that was quite an interesting observation, and but I want to kind of ask like the group or audience if you have any questions, further questions, or what did you experience or perceive? No questions?
I would like to know what the audiences you do these exercises with, how do they react in comparison to which format you choose, like public space or workshop or
So for example, I mean, I think that the, let's say, most lasting, I mean, first of all, of course, there are very different reactions concerning the format. Like, for example, in, let's say, more like these public environments where it is more a happening, or even like this performative format, it's so in all settings there is this emotional level of touching, and this kind of, whoa, that was intense, and this kind of, yeah, makes me feel. So guilt is, for example, often a feeling that people said, kind of, yeah, a very also emotional reaction, and kind of, yeah, empathic so reaction. But of course, there's a huge difference, for example, between, let's say, an environment where people can just leave and come, like the experience, for example, that I had once at an exhibition space where we were like in a group context. It was very interesting to observe how you get into it, or how you can easily just step out and be like, yeah, well, okay, I know what it is, yeah, bye. While, for example, in workshop context where we're smaller groups and it's like a closed, let's say, like in a room, it becomes a very, first of all, intense group experience, but also afterwards, there, yeah, the reflection also of, okay, like my own position is most of the time like very strong, this reflection, especially about one's own positioning and one's own privileges. So yeah, and then of course, if it's, for example, in the context of an education, like pedagogies with an initiative, also with younger, like with teenagers, there I'm always pretty amazed how this is kind of, really bring them, yeah, no, need to do something like against it. So there are really different reactions, but I would say if it comes to like a longer, very intense reaction, it's really in this workshop settings. I hope this answers a bit your question.
Can I ask, how do you finance your work? You said that it's the collective, isn't it? Or is it just you? And how do you get funding?
Until now, there is no funding as such coming from institutions. I'm using basically the money that I earn with my my other job, where I'm working within some initiatives and some stuff. And yeah, as a collective, we are right now like building up to basically still put the money that we earn into it. And on the longer run, yeah, of course, I'm looking for fundings, but at the same time, I have to also say that I'm like, yeah, also aware or quite critical sometimes of where money comes from and where does it go to, and like these layers. But until now, the fact is that, yeah, either it comes from when I, for example, like present some work, or my other jobs.
How would you describe the impact you are making for the society, other than the immediate reaction you see in the public who participates your events?
Of course, this is difficult to evaluate yet on, because this would indicate like, yeah, certain research of also asking the impact afterwards, like after a long time. I can just give examples of people that participated or that wrote to me afterwards, like after a longer time, who, for example, said like, yeah, that they somehow have to now think quite often if they are in a supermarket in front of a shelf, for example, like buying chocolate or whatsoever, like what they are buying. So this moment of being remembered of an experience, and then maybe adapt your consumer habits. But also, I mean, in the context of as I said, for example, with the textile training, I also already had like beautiful experience where people afterwards started to like get a bit political engaged and said, okay, like this somehow this experience of not just getting visual information or like graphs and it's like these working conditions, but more like a human based experience somehow provoked them to do something. So that's like individual references that I have, but I cannot give you like a full on big research on what it changed yet.
But do you think that this method could be used to kind of like solve conflicts? I'm thinking about your presentation where you like imagined like the left and the right, and there was a lot of like racism in there as well. Like, do you think that you could use this method to solve these kinds of like issues, or not solve it, but
no,
create some kind of understanding?
No, I definitely don't think that this method can solve such like these complexities of these issues, because I think, or I believe that we need like still a lot of different things to somehow work on solving somehow polarization. And it also doesn't, it not just takes like a performative method and then like everyone is kind of more open or whatsoever. No, not at all. I mean, we need like a lot of acts on political levels and stuff. But for me personally, it is a small but like a contribution to somehow, in all these complexities that we face on a daily life basis about politics and like global structures, that behind all of this, they're like at the end are human beings. And I believe somehow if we can like remember this again and also maybe experience this again and move beyond images or words that we also use mostly, it's like this moment of like switching for a second perspective from the body can at least have provoke thoughts and provoke, as I said, for example, this self-reflection. Because like, for example, this how I developed this method came basically from the fact that in my bachelor I studied fashion design, and when I was sitting like 12 hours for the first time on a sewing machine, I was like, what the fuck, I never want to end up in this business. But you know, before my own like a certain physical experience, I was not so close to like understanding some layers. So it's a very small, it's really a small step of creating like an awareness on another level about these issues.
Is there, I was wondering as well if there's like a specific reason for you to choose these certain situations. Is it that you want to like point at some kind of like point at something specific in these situations?
So like when it comes to labor conditions, it comes maybe also from an I don't want to, but somehow from a personal motivation of my dad, for example, working in a car factory since like, I don't know, 40 years. And then seeing how I went, for example, into like, you know, kind of now good education and these things, but still, yeah, seeing somehow these daily life routines and also this pattern of not moving out of this industrialized machine was for me somehow a motivation to really pinpoint also certain like structures of labor and how we produce things, because this is still, yeah, how many things are running. And yeah, it's also really based on my previous experience of starting to engage in some initiatives that deal with supply chains and try to adapt some political rules to like change this production and like this capitalistic thought. And when I then realized there that, yeah, we are talking a lot about this, there needs to be change, but it's really staying so abstract and on infographics. That's when I then started to engage with it. So it's coming also from a very like I think personal experience. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
But I feel like if with what you're talking about, and this like estrangement of labor and then trying to understand it physically, like the problem is that those who maybe would need to understand it mostly, or like whoever's in charge of big corporations, they're probably the ones furthest away from like knowing this or like embodying this or like doing this kind of empathic like movement or whatever, which is a shame. And like, because if they had to do what they ask workers to do, or what basically their empires are built of, like they probably wouldn't do it. But yeah,
It's an interesting point that you bring out, because I mean, I was once, or we were with Clean Clothes campaign quite close to actually, yeah, H&M, the some of the people in the headquarters in Stockholm, to like have such a moment. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I want to do like, even we do a short training, but I want to do this that they like understand what is happening. Sadly it failed, but yeah, I'm inviting actually, maybe they are not listening, but yeah, I would, my aim is also somehow to reach at one point like a level where, I don't know in which engagement, but to address exactly doing this training with these, like, yeah, it sounds also, but with these kind of people that have like the power to maybe like change. It's a very good point. And yeah.
Maybe because that's also looking at time, I think because we're going to stop this first part of the workshop now, but I think the last discussion is of course this is where it's situated, I would say, but I think that your work is moving into that direction to bring other forms of understanding and other practices that are not into contexts where they're usually not kind of practiced, perceived, valued, and so on. So by kind of mixing the formats or the perspectives, the materials you're working with, I think you're going into this direction, and that's what I think is really interesting about your work. And from what I observed from distance, is like, I mean, you graduated, I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe 1, 2, 3.
2018. Yeah.
So you're quite active with kind of bringing this format to different places, and so I think I think that you're on a good way. That's what I think, and it's really interesting if you could move into that direction, to actually also having people experience that in a context where this is then also needed.
Yeah. So if they're like, for example, if one is listening, or you know someone that you would like to invite to such a training, I'm very happy to. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much for this very first part of the workshop lecture, and we're now stopping the the public live streaming, but we as a group, we stay in Zoom to continue.